safe distances and with masks in the garden. We'll be setting up for that again this spring. So just a quick background for those of you who may not be as familiar with the Oudolf Garden. What you're seeing on your screen right now, of course, is a picture of Belle looking from west to east over Sunset Point and the Scott Fountain in that circle there. This is a postcard, an old postcard of Belle Isle, and you can see the central axis of the old Olmsted design. Kind of wanting to mention that because next year is the 200th or the bicentennial celebration of Olmsted designs in national parks across the country. And so it was a kind of a cool thing, kind of a cool connection to have both that original developer of national parks and a current designer also having a design on the island. Let's go to the next one. We had sent, go ahead, Amanda, whenever you're ready. We had heard of Piet Oudolf and his work on the High Line in New York City, but we had not known that we could actually get his ear and encourage him to come to Detroit and talk him into designing a garden for us in his new perennial style. He has become probably the most famous garden designer in the world these days. There are a lot of fabulous designers, it's true, but few of them have the recognition and the following that Piet Oudolf does. He first designed in this country at the Lurie Garden in Chicago, which is part of the Millennium Park. And he won a contest, design contest, to do that design. And that was about 15 years ago now. His more famous garden is actually the High Line in New York City, which was built on top of an old railroad track that cut through the west side of Manhattan. This guy has done so much to pioneer the use of perennials in modern landscaping, even though he comes from a line of masters in planting and design and people who broke all the old rules of landscaping. He's still with us today at 75. He just had a birthday about a month ago. And this garden that he has designed for Detroit is a legacy garden for him and very, very special in many ways. We'll get into more of that as we go on. Let's go ahead, Amanda. People often ask how you say his name. When Piet introduces himself, he says, "My name is Piet Oudolf." So it's owl like brown, cow, owl. It's Oudolf. You're looking at one of his gardens in Norfolk, England. And I like to show this picture because it has a number of plants that are also growing right now at the Oudolf Garden in Detroit. I also like to show it because unlike the Lurie Garden, which is planted on top of a huge parking structure, which covers over some train tracks, and unlike the High Line, which was formerly used as a train track, this garden and our garden on Belle Isle is actually planted in the earth. We've had some engineering for ours, but I'll talk a little more about that again also later. Let's take a look at Vlinderhof. Another one of his famous gardens and an exquisitely beautiful place. If you're ever traveling through Europe, you want to put that on your destination. Let's change slides. What you see here, the use of grasses is so typical for the naturalistic planting style. And also noticing that this garden is clearly a fall garden, late summer at best, but fall garden. And one of the big achievements of Piet's planting styles is that his gardens look good in all seasons. Some of you may be familiar with the film that was made by Tom Piper. It was a documentary about Piet Oudolf's life and work. And it's called 5 Seasons. Of course, the 4 seasons in our temperate zone, but the 5th season being time. And as the garden matures and as the community grows together, it looks more and more like a natural existing planting, something that nature herself would come up with. Let's go to the next one. A little bit about the project. The whole site is 2.5 acres. There is more than just a perennial bed planting, which is the main garden. There's also an experimental rain garden, and people ask what that means. I'm sure most of you are aware, but just to be sure that we're all on the same page, a rain garden is, in this instance, a place that gathers the stormwater runoff so that it doesn't all end up in the sewer system, which then can overflood sewer treatment plants and put unnecessary or undesirable things into our wetlands and into our lakes and rivers. So what we have, another special thing we have in the Oudolf Garden in Detroit is the only rain garden that he has designed. We also have a wetlands, which will be all native habitat, and that also sets us aside in a 3rd or 4th way from so many of his other gardens. The whole project is for a little over $4.5 million. We have 2.2 million in design and construction, and we have $2.4 million in endowment. And the reason for that is because we wanted this garden to be able to carry forward his vision into the future and never to be dependent on taxpayers or civic resources to pay for the upkeep and the replacement that all gardens require from time to time. We are still raising money, and we're doing that in a whole lot of ways. Lots of them are quite fun, and we'll show you a little bit about that when Amanda goes online live for us later. Let's go to the next slide, Amanda. Again, to show you a more modern picture of Belle Isle, but this is again, obviously Belle Isle. You see the bubble on the right that says the garden site that shows you that we're on the south side of the island, because of course the river flows from east to west at this spot when it comes out, when it empties out of Lake St. Clair. You see MacArthur Bridge going over to the mainland. And again, the wheel, that is the Scott Fountain on the left-ish side with its own retention pond. And then you follow, as you follow the road that is the belt line around the island, you can cross over the bridge just before you get to the Dawson Maritime Museum. And you'll see the iconic bell tower that was built in the 1920s. And the used to be empty, grassy site in front of that bell tower is a site that Piet himself selected. Given a choice of several places around the city, this is a place that he chose because it was right in the heart of a recreational area for Detroiters and Michigan and those who come to visit us. It's near the conservatory, which is just east across the road. There's an old band shell, which we hope will be restored soon. And it's across the way from the largest picnic area on the island, where you see that grove of trees in the middle of the island, just to the left of the green arrow. Next. It's an exquisitely beautiful site because when you're there, especially in facing the Carillon, you can see these huge freighters passing in the international channel, and it's just such an unusual and beautiful thing to see. So this main garden has 15 different beds in it, 3 styles of planting. It's the only place that has all 3 of his famous styles blended together in one unit. And in that planting, we have put in 26,000 plants And just 2 weeks ago, 48,000 bulbs. So the bulbs will bloom from April through fall. And again, I've mentioned these other things already, so we can go to the next slide, Amanda. This is a drawing of the most famous one of Piet's styles, which is the matrix style. And if you look closely at this, I may have spoken to some of you may have been in one group or another that have seen this particular slide before. If you look at this, you'll see a yellow field, and in that yellow field, you see all the freckles. Those freckles stand for plugs of a grass called Sporobolus heterolepis, which is one of our very own native prairie grasses. It's a beautiful thin-bladed grass that has a rich top, and when it blooms in late summer, has the most wonderful fragrance. It's also highly used by pollinators, native pollinators, and it's called a matrix because you see how it goes all around and through the bed. Every other block of planting that is in the bed is suffused with this grass. The result is, after it's matured, it looks like a grassy meadow with all of these forbs blooming in large enough groups so that the bloom has an impact. You see those X's are also in the design. That's actually a baptisia, and those are scattered throughout. And there are within the grasses not only groups of plantings in those circles that are variously colored and have their own little shorthand abbreviation, but they're all surrounded by that matrix, which again in this case is Sporobolus heterolepis. And that's the bee beds. We have more of the bee beds in those 15 than any other style of beds. And let's go to the next one. And I presume you're noticing also over on the right-hand column, the groups of plants that are contained in each of these design styles. The C style is the more recent of his designs. And it is, I guess we're going to look at the A styles last, but the C style is an updated version of block planting. In this kind of planting, there is all of the shapes of how the plants are grouped are very organic, and the way they connect like pieces of a puzzle. It's very complicated. It's hard to draw. It's hard to plant, but the end result is an instant natural look. It's a different look than the bee bed, but they're extremely compatible. Let's go ahead to the next one. And that should be the A style. But just to contrast these, that's all of them together. It's still possible to look at this and see. If you look in the very center, you see where the gray walkways are. There are the bee beds, which remember is his matrix style, his most famous style. And on either side of the bee beds are A's, A style. A style is a more formal block planting. And I like to describe this as if you go to A1, you'll see you can draw a line from the left edge over to the right edge. And then if you go down a little bit, you can draw another line all the way back across to where you came from. That is classic block style planting. Now, through that block planting, you'll see our circles and other plants that are scattered throughout that break up the static nature of that block planting. So if you're familiar with Piet Oudolf's book, the one that he wrote with Noel Kingsbury, that book really focused on block style planting. This is an upgrade from the book that he wrote with Noel Kingsbury, this particular design. So you see we have beds that are are lettered from east to west, that's from right to left, and they're numbered from left to right. And then you see clear over on the left, the rain garden. And that white walkway that circles around the top is an ADA concrete walkway that is suitable for wheelchair or walker use. And it comes up around the top of the garden. And that gray form that you see at the top is actually a peace monument that was built in the 1940s. And the peace monument has benches set in it, so there's a nice place to sit there. And there's also an opening. The bed is abbreviated there, bed B3, you can see, so that it allows for some place to gather. Historically, when that peace monument was built, across from the Carillon, which is on the opposite side of the garden and in the wetlands area, that was used for prayer services. They would have Easter morning services, and there were prayer services there in that area. And the state Parks and Recreation wanted to preserve some feeling of that historic use. So Piet had to keep the sightline open from the Peace Monument to the Carillon for that purpose, for historic value. It's also interesting to see, if you look between some of the beds, you see across the middle and down on the lower edge and through the very center, those walkways that are colored gray. That's a material that was new to me. It's crushed or crumbled granite. It's very, very fine, almost like dust. And when you set it, it has, for the first few days, a kind of a springy feel to it, and it gradually settles down. There's a polymer bonding in it that holds the dust in place. It's still suitable for a wheelchair or for walking, but it's a very pleasant pathway, and it is a permeable hard surface, unlike the concrete walk that surrounds the north side by the Peace Monument. It's a permeable path. So in that way, we can also capture some of the stormwater in that way and reintroduce it to the ground. And you see the green walkways are between the beds also those will be planted with a combination of fescues that we're actually having made into a turf. So we're going to apply it as sod rolls, but it's a special blend of fescues that will take the foot traffic a little better. That same blend is going to circle around the rain garden, and then we have a different blend on the embankment, which we'll see in one of the zone pictures a little later. Let's go on to the next. Those of you who garden and like to put plants together, I thought might like a little more in-depth explanation of his designs for this garden. Well, I think you probably all know this plant pretty well. Swamp milkweed is Asclepias incarnata, some people say. What you're looking at is not just the picture of that, but you can see the information there. That's how many are included in the entire design for the seabeds, where you'll find that plant and how many there are at the time of the planting. And what you also see right where Amanda's mouse is that's actually Piet's scrawl there, the Asclepias incarnata, and that's his particular way of indicating that on his design. I'm showing you that so that when you get into the website, you'll notice those things and understand what that is signifying. Let's go to the next one, Amanda. So we had these incredible maps that one of our board members put together for us, and on the one side was the design. You can't see it, it would be to the left of what you're looking at here. And we had all of the lists, we had the list of all the groups of plants that would go into any particular bed, in this case, bed B1. And so with these lists, once the bed was prepared, the design was painted into or on top of the bed with landscaping paint. And then we would put in stakes to indicate to the people who were going to place the plants just how many of what kind of plant to go in that bed. So the shorthand on the right would correspond with his actual design. So you could you could make the interpretation as exact as possible from his hand to the actual design. And you may recognize some of these plants. Amsonia is especially a beautiful plant, and if you're not familiar with that, I'm sure you will become so. Let's go to the next, and you'll see in this next slide the drawings that were used when we were bringing the plants out of the pop-up nursery and to the stage them by the side of the bed. And each time another group of plants were brought, they were marked off there in the red marks there on the long list to the right. And then as the plants were being staged to place, other people, let's go to the next one, Amanda. Other people were putting in these stakes. Oops, that's fine. We'll just talk about this. Well, in over a course of 3 days, we took 26,000 plants off of semis and other vehicles as they were shipped in from various nurseries. What a cool thing to know that out of the 14 nurseries that we were able to purchase these plants from, and we had ordered these plants were not available on the market at all because they are new plants, they're recently hybridized or recent selections. And 10 of those growers were for here in Michigan. So we were really excited to be able to bring an immediate economic boom to our own native growers here in Michigan. And here you see, these are board members and some students from some of the landscape schools around who were able to come, everyone wearing masks and trying to keep socially distant during this time. It rained about 1.5 inches that day. It was a really amazing day to be unloading all those plants. Let's go to the next one. And I think this will take us back to a conversation I was having. The pop-up nursery. So here are 26,000 plants arranged alphabetically, starting on the top right, and then going from one group to the next all the way across. The brown pathways were mulch that we laid down because we couldn't slog through the mud. That day we were unloading and getting things set up. This was where things were staged before they were taken and restaged by each bed as things were called for in line. Let's go to the next. It's an overhead drone shot, obviously. And here's a close-up of the nursery. You see some phlox blooming there. Sweet Laura is the phlox that's bloomed. That's named after the head horticulturist at the Lurie Garden in Chicago, who has been with us every step of the way, as have a number of some of our amazing American plantsmen and women through this whole process. Let's go to the next. Austin Eichett is one of Piet's proteges, and Austin is holding Piet's design in his hand, a can of spray paint in the other hand. Let's go to the next one. You can see the flooding behind him there. This is Roy Diblick. Roy's latest book is a book called No Maintenance, K-N-O-W, Maintenance. If you haven't seen that book yet, it's one you're going to want to look at. Roy Diblick was Piet's first North American plant consultant. He was planting native grasses and native plants in the Chicago area, in Chicago parks, long before it was popular and long before people were talking about using native plants. It was a natural for him to be not only involved with Piet at the Lurie Garden, but through all of Piet's projects here in North America. Let's go to the next. We call Roy the Zen because he brings such a calming and warm presence to all the flurry of activity. You can see how the beds were painted to get ready for the plants to be staged beside them. And the shorthand written in each of these blocks of bed. Pretty sure this is an A bed. Let's go on to the next one. When we first got the first design from Piet back in 2019, we had no idea that we were going to run into the flooding that we did. I think the flooding surprised a lot of people, even the Army Corps of Engineers. And so to deal with that flooding, we took the design back to Piet, and we also hired some soil experts to help us deal with the situation, worked hand in hand with the Department of Natural Resources, and we ended up raising the bed 3 feet and putting a layer of gravel underneath, which acts as an atmospheric barrier between the beds that are planted on top and the groundwater that is so close to the surface all through Belle Isle, because obviously of its location. You can see that that toothed looking stone that's all around the A bed on the right side, that stone all came from Alpena, and it's ledge rock, and it's what holds the gravel in place there along the edges. You can also see in this particular drone shot the first of the beds that were planted. The one in the top middle is in the process of being painted to get it ready for the planting. Let's go to the next. Stakes, we won't spend much time here, but you can see each of those painted designs got one of these stakes that told you not only which plant was going in there, but how many, and to make sure that you knew, again, that's the bed, B5 there. And you can see the sitting on the design that we had those designs laminated, thank goodness, because it was so rainy that week. Let's go to the next. This is a landscape architect who was assisting us with the placement of plantings, and she was using the stakes to put everything out. Let's go to the next. There's a close-up of what that stage of things looked like. Let's go to the next. And here was the planting crew. We hired a professional planting crew to come in. This is a group of people who work together all the time. And it was the safest way that we could get these plants in the ground and as to Piet's specified design. So here they are working with those. You can see that particular plant is pretty root bound, and of course they had to cut off that part of the roots as they were planting. Many of these plants had been overwintered for us because of the flooding and the delay in construction, so that's why some of them were like that. I have to say, let's go to the next, Amanda, that they are all doing so very well and things are growing well in their place. Here's Roy helping set out the plants on top of the painted design. Next. Ready when you are, Amanda. A nice drone shot showing the plants actually going in the ground. The guys in the green vests, safety vests, are doing the planting. You can see the groupings of plants in that design. The walkways weren't finished during the planting because they didn't want to put that crushed granite down and then have it all muddied over with the planting. Let's go to the next. I love the design, looking down on top of it. It's really attractive. Ready when you are. There we go. Here's a nice overview of the planting just immediately after it was finished. Let's go to the next. Again, you could see there was so much rain that week. It was still flooding the wetlands area. This gives you a pretty good shot. If you look in the middle, you can see a white splotch. That actually, if we could get detail on that, you would see that those are concrete steps. And eventually there will be a walkway that goes across toward the bell tower on the left from the garden. And on either side of those steps is an embankment, just natural it's already been planted with a seed that should sprout in the spring. That'll hold that bank, and it contains also some drain outlets for the gravel, so that the gravel, as water comes down through the system, it can drain out into the wetlands. There, we can go ahead to the next. It's a nice shot. You see the old Rensen there. So in the last 3 months, these are the things that have happened there. The rain garden has been constructed, partially planted with trees and shrubs. It is an experimental planting. Things are being moved around even this week as we begin to see how the water is moving through that rain garden. The crushed granite walkways are now there. We'll see a picture later on that shows those a little better. And sidewalks have been poured. We put in 48,000 more bulbs, and the fundraising continues. And there's a list for you if you want to take that number down or take a look at that. You can also find that on the website. And let's go to the next slide, Amanda. This is like the forbs or the perennials that were designed for each of the 3 styles of beds. The bulbs also had their own design, which was another overlay on the perennials. It didn't necessarily have anything to do with the perennials, because some of these will be blooming before the perennials have really started to show, let alone bloom for the season. The plantings, though, go all the way through from some of the early things like crocus, all the way through to Martagon lilies that'll bloom late in the summer. The particular Martagon lily for the beds are Cloud Stride, which is a dark maroon color. I'm anxious to see that one. But you can see the how the beds are set up here in the groupings for the bulbs for the A beds. It's also, I'll point out to you, if you look at these circles that indicate where certain bulbs should be planted, when you actually set the bulbs out for these, it isn't within this circle that he has indicated on the design. What that circle indicates is where the concentration of it is. So for example, if you see the teal colored circle in the A1 bed on the left side, you'll see another one down below. The bulbs from those 2 will actually come together. There will be, they trace from one concentration of bulb planting to another. So in the end, it's a very naturally placed planting. And in fact, when we put these bulbs out for planting, we have instructions to take them by, we had counted handfuls, but they were then just thrown like you would throw a bowling ball, and roll the bulbs out. And then you leave them where they lay. You plant them as they fall. So all of the bulbs for each bed were put out, about 8,000 bulbs per bed. And then we went through with hori-hori knives, or the digging knives, the soil knives, and they were all planted then where they had fallen. It's really fun to see how that comes up in the spring. Okay, let's go to the next. And there's our 2 heroes, Austin Eichett on the right, Piet's protege, and Roy Diblick on the left. And if you want, and you can see the conservatory in the background. It's kind of amazing to me how close the conservatory looks now that the garden is planted. But it's a beautiful site. I think Piet chose such a nice place to put this garden and his very special design. A lot of Piet's designs, like the one in Lurie Garden and the one in New York on the High Line, other architects created the space, and he was just brought in to make decisions about plants, where to put plants and what combinations to put them. In our case, Piet did the whole design. So that's another thing yet that makes this a very special Oudolf design in the world. And we know that once the restrictions are are lifted for travel, this will become, like all of his other gardens, a travel destination for gardeners, and they will come from all over the world. We had, like some of you had wanted to help with the planting, we had letters from Australia, from South Africa, from South Korea, from all Eastern Europe, England, Central America, people who all had hoped to come and help to plant, but because of the pandemic, were not able to. And so we know that the interest is there, and it'll be so wonderful to be able to share this, this great thing with the world. Let's go to the next. And before we take questions, Amanda, this would be a great time to take a look at the website. I've asked Amanda to share her screen with us and to go on to the Oudolf Garden Detroit. And a couple of things I want to show you about. If you have not made yourself familiar with this, there are a lot of cool things here. Let's go to education first. Since that's the thing that master gardeners are keyed into, I thought that might be of good interest to you. And go ahead and pop that menu down. You can see, if you go to the plant list, you will be able to find all the plants in each of the beds. And of course, since this is online, you can find these as you're walking through the garden. So you can see the bulbs are listed, separated from the forbs or the perennials. And you can also go all down further and you'll see the grasses for each style, each design. Many of these things you'll recognize. Some of them are particular cultivars that will be new to, that are new to all of us. And you can see there all the different, it's 152 different species involved in these incredible designs. And then if you go back up to the drop-down menu, under education, here's another little fun thing. If you look at the plant quiz, the third item on the list, most all of the species are in here. And every time you look at it, you'll get a different sequence of things. But you can have a chance to play a game here and test your knowledge of plants. If you want, underneath where it says up at the top under plant quiz, it says previous and next, and that's how you can scroll through the pictures. But there's also a place where you can always show the names if you don't feel like guessing that day. But yeah, so you can, and then it'll show you as you go through. And each of the plants in all the beds, there's a picture of them here. You can guess at them and go through. It's a great way to familiarize yourself with the plants before you go down to the garden and see. And then that's a beautiful plant, isn't it? The Orangiums, those are doing so well. And there we are. That's another one of the things that we've been working on while we've been doing everything else that's been necessary over the last 6 years to bring this garden together. One more thing under education. If you pop that menu down again, Amanda, look at Explore the Garden. This is an incredible app because it shows you the garden in all kinds of layers. And she's going to pull that screen down a little bit, and you can see there on the left of the map, this is Piet's drawing, his actual design overlaid on the actual drone pictures of the area. You can hit the plus or minus sign to zoom in. So let's go on in, wherever you end up is fine. And then Amanda, go ahead and just pick a spot and click on something. And you can see when she clicks, you'll be able to see what the plant is. So you can go through the garden and click and see, that's which iris this is. Oh, there's that feathery plant. It's an Amsonia. There's Pycnanthemum muticum. Here's Pycnanthemum, whatever the other one is, I've forgotten. And so that's another one of our native plants, Lobelia syphilitica, there on the corner. So go over to the compass points on the right top. of it and go down to the teal colored square that's on its point. There we go. And yeah, top right and then down on that. And if you click that menu, yeah, just click on the, there you go. You can, yeah, hit X-ray. And with the X-ray, you get the actual latest zone or latest drone of the garden. We get a new one every week. And then you can cut right through the design and see what that bed actually looks like if you need to do a comparison. And that will X-ray down, that'll enlarge down quite well. The date of the last drone is listed there in the drop-down menu. You can go by bed, you can do all kinds of things with that, just play around with that and have a blast. Couple other things, just speaking of the drones, it's fun to see how the garden was built, and there's a whole tab if you go up above, explore the garden, and out of this section, just left of education, building the garden will show you a whole list of the flyovers and some wonderful shots of Belle Isle, and you can go all the way back and see the building of the garden taken week by week through its construction. We were so fortunate, honestly, that this flood happened when it did. I can't imagine how sad we would feel if we'd spent the $2 million constructing this garden and then had the flood come. As it was, stop right there a second, Amanda. You can see how the granite paths in the middle and the right edge define the edges on the center of the bed. And the embankment then to the right of that granite path, it actually slants down about 3.5 feet and to an area that was scooped out to allow the water that was displaced by our building the garden up 3 feet, a place that it could stand rather than sending it off downstream, which is not only illegal, but not fair. So that is, and you can see the rain garden being planted there toward the top lower edge of that screen. So that's another nice shot, Lake Tacoma on the right. So with that, Amanda, we have a, what is it now? It's just about 20 after 7. Maybe some people have some questions, maybe not, but if you would like to open it up, I'm happy to field questions.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and let us know if you have any questions for Richard. You can also use the chat if you're more comfortable doing that and watching that at this point. We do have one question already on chat. It said, are plants 100% native to Michigan and the Midwest?
It's a great question. We have in the habitat area, the habitat plants will be native. And there are a lot of native plants in the rain garden as well as there are native vars, and some we pointed out the one, the Lobelia syphiliticus, there are more. And if you're familiar with native plants and are using native plants, you'll be able to go through that list and see how many native plants there actually are. So many of the plants in Piet's palette are from the Midwest because the Netherlands is in that same temperate zone, just like parts of China and Korea and Japan, that also can support the kinds of plants that have evolved to live through the change of seasons that we experience here. But what you'll see is, for example, we have 3 echinaceas that are Piet's introductions. They're selections of native plants. One is Echinacea pallida. This one is called hula dancer because the recurved petals are thin and they kind of remind you of a grass skirt. It's a very beautiful plant when it's in groups. The one is called Fatal Attraction, and it was one that has shorter stems that are very, very almost black, and would show up beautifully in the winter. So there are a range of natives, nativars, and cultivars, and selections that have been put on the market by a lot of different plant breeders. So it's not a purely native planting. That's not Piet's style. And one of the things that we've discovered it's even been written about in several horticultural magazines, the way that Piet combines the plants actually bring in more pollinators and have something greater to offer them at any given time than if they were simply the straight natives. So it's a mixture of plants planted to feature the qualities of each plant, and planted so that they can live in community. Some native plants are very hardy, competitive plants, like certain asters. And if you were to put certain asters in that bed that are native plants, that's all that you would have within a 2 or 3 year time. So the ones that are selected are plants that can live in community and provide that beauty year round.
We also had a question about how long will it take for the garden to reach maturity?
It is so surprising to us how within 4 weeks of planting, we were already seeing bloom on about half of the plants that were put in there. I was really surprised. Like most any garden, we're going to see maturity after the 2nd and 3rd year. The plants are put together much closer on center than what you and I may be used to seeing. And there may be a couple of reasons for that, but one of them is that it brings out certain characteristics in the plants, like the spirabolus I was talking about, the grass. It makes it stand up and be a little taller than it would be if it were planted further apart. It also makes for quicker maturation and less opportunity for weeds, which is wonderful because it makes maintenance easier.
We also had a question along the line of maintenance. What is the philosophy of maintaining the original design? For instance, if the plants reseed, will they be removed, or do you let the garden evolve on its own?
That's kind of a yes answer, because there are lots of things that happen. There's never, with any garden, there's never a cruise control. There are always going to be changes. Some of the things that Piet has designed may not do as well as we would like them to do, or as he had hoped they would do. So when he comes through, he will specify a new plant that provides a better intent. And as far as some seeding goes, there are some things that are spread through the garden just in a very artistic fashion anyway. So there will be some seeding of things. I mean, again, Lobelia syphilitica is something that self-sows freely, and I'm sure that will be allowed to do so. There are other things that will not be allowed to, because they would, again, if they sowed too freely, it would spoil the design. So we'll keep the design as close as possible. As he reviews the design, because he's not been able to be here because of travel restrictions, he's walking through it pretty much every week in a FaceTime experience, and giving direction along the way, and that'll continue. After you, again, I don't know if I answered the question, but we're just getting started. I just know that, from my friends at the Highline and my friends at Lurie Garden, that it changes as things go. In the Lurie Garden, there was a river of salvia planted that just exquisite, but as the garden has matured, they've realized that blue disappears for much of the season. It doesn't come in bloom until midsummer, and then it's gone in about 3 weeks, because as you know, perennials have their time. But now they have suffused blue bulbs through, so that river is repeated in a different fashion, but in the spring. And other things that will bloom blue later in the fall. So the design grows and the idea matures, just like I'm sure you do in your own garden.
And then how much of the garden has been planted and how much still needs to be planted?
Hey, that's a great question. If you walk by on the road, because the garden isn't open yet, it won't. We're targeting August of 21, but I'm not sure we will have to wait that long. But you'll see if you walk by, there are white flags here and there on the gardens, on the beds. And those are things that because of crop failure, we didn't receive, or there were other reasons, something that wasn't available yet, and we had to have it brought in because it was being grown by, we'll get the roots from a grower in the Netherlands or something, and then we'll have our own growers bring it to maturity before we plant it. So I would say with the sedges and the forbs that have yet to go into the rain garden, and the things that have yet to be planted in the beds, probably another 5,000 plants.
And then somebody was wondering what the grass between the plants was, the one in the
Oh, sure. Sporobolus heterolepis. That was for the bed bee, the matrix grass. As also, the common name is prairie dropseed. Prairie dropseed. Wonderful grass. Yeah, it's really a beautiful grass. Very fragrant, as I mentioned.
And is this the last planned Oudolf garden, or?
He is the ever-ready bunny. He doesn't seem to stop for anything. He's still designing, and he's still very active. We were so lucky to get his ear with the help of Tom Piper, the documentary person that put the film 5 Seasons together. When we got Pete, we didn't realize that he was saying no a couple hundred times a week to people who were wanting him to come and design gardens. So the fact that we were able to get him at all was really a marvel. And he came to Detroit and he fell in love with Detroit. He's one of our best worldwide ambassadors now. He talks about Detroit all the time. People I know in English gardens say, "Oh, we'd like for him to quit talking about Detroit," but he loves Detroit, and he's poured himself into this project.
Did anybody else have any more questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or use chat, whatever is most comfortable for you.
Hey, this is Lucy Probst. I've got a question. I was out there this past weekend. Is there going to be any place to park nearby the garden so that people can actually get to it? I mean, how do you get there?
Well, the best way to park right now is this could change. Lots of things could change. So I don't know. DNR is going to always be in charge of parking on the island until, as long as they're in charge of the park, they'll be in charge of the parking. And that's really going to be their decision how to handle that. We know that there is a lot of parking at the conservatory. There's also some parking at the skating rink on the other side behind the Remick band shell. That skating pavilion parking is rarely ever used, and that's really a fairly quick, a fairly easy walk to the garden from there. I know if you've been to Longwood or Lurie, you will have walked far longer than either of those 2 parking lots to get to their gardens.
Anybody else? Last call for questions or any comments?
Richard, thank you very much for spending this evening with us. The plans are fantastic to see.
I'm so glad to have a chance to share them with you, and I would encourage the group to think about a tour. I'll be happy to walk you through the garden and reacquaint you with some of these things in person when you're able to do that, and when things again are settled down. We have enough space there that we can socially distance and still be heard. And it's it's a very exciting thing. I would also encourage you again to, even though you have signed up, check on your status, make sure everything is good. If you're not getting our emails, something is wrong with our data, and we need to get that corrected for you. And you're welcome, Shelley. We do have an active core of volunteers, which is winding down now for the year. We did have some mulch issues. We had to also move some plants out of the way when the concrete guys came in, and we relied on our volunteers to do that. In the future, we will be needing volunteers to water. All the watering is manual. Even though we have irrigation installed, it has to be turned on manually, which is because this is a next level of gardening. There's no automatic irrigation. Somebody has to lay an eye on the plants and test the soil before water is just automatically applied. So there's all kinds of things that are going to need to happen with this, and we're going to be needing all of our volunteers. I think it was Laura, we were talking about getting that application filled out for the Master Gardeners to use as part of their volunteer hours. And also, because as a part of this, we're also going to need guides, people who will learn what I know about the garden and who will develop their own experiences with it and be able to pass that on to people who are coming through to visit and to learn. This garden is already turning out to be a gateway for a lot of people who don't have experience with gardens and who don't know gardens. But when you see it even now, it's quite beautiful. When it's in flower, it'll be even more fantastic. And people will be drawn to it, and we'll need people who are knowledgeable and who have an enthusiasm for gardening, like I know you do. And so we're going to be working and training people to help with all of that as well.
We did have a question too, if they are still planting bulbs, if they still need help planting bulbs at the garden, or is
we finished that. We actually got those 48,000 bulbs planted inside of 3 days. It was unbelievable. We did send a note out. Those of you who are on the list may have gotten a note, but it was very quick notice. We didn't know when the bulbs were actually coming in, and when they came in, we needed to get them in the ground because who knew we were going to have summer again. But we wanted to be sure and get those in, and we got them in. But for the time being, no, we're good. We don't anticipate putting any more plants in. Our professional planters will be moving some of the shrubs in the rain garden into places that we think will be better for them than the original design. Pete's all part of that as well. As I said, this is an experimental thing. So there are weekly drone photos on the website, and we looked at a few of them, and they're actual videos, so you can fly over with the drone and see everything. You can, there's a place on that website also, if you have any questions or want to contact us, you can do that. And again, you can adopt a plant. There are still plants that haven't been adopted. You can adopt a bulb or a whole bed of bulbs or a whole group of bulbs, if that makes sense to you as a token to someone who's also a gardener. And then your name will always be there associated with that. It's a great, great gift.
And any more questions? Well, thank you so much, Richard, for speaking with us tonight. I know a lot of people are really excited about this project and really enjoyed your presentation. Again, thank you so much.
I'm glad. I'm so glad. You're welcome. Anytime. Please let us know when we can, when we can get together again on the garden.
Most definitely. And with that, I'll say goodnight to everybody. It's about an hour's worth of education, and it'll be under community beautification. And we'll have a
Welcome, Julie.
recording going out to you later on this week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks,
Bye.
Richard. This was great. A nice bit of spring to look forward to.